Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to learn how to build beautiful maps in React.js. We're going to start with a map without any data and then create markers like the one you can see over here, San Francisco. So we're going to create these markers to show in the map. Then we're going to learn about annotations and how you can annotate within the map like the one you can see with Paris. And finally, we're going to look at a more advanced topic that's going to let you have tooltip when you hover. So let's say you're hovering on top of United States and you see a tooltip with the name of the country. All of these are very customizable. You can make the markers look however you want it to. You can also change the tooltip to display more than just the name of the country, but that's what we're going to build to keep things simple. Alright, so with that being said, here's the code for it. It's going to be around 130 lines. We're going to start from scratch, just so that you understand things better. Before we go into the code, just to look at the directory structure I have here. It's a pretty typical React app. So you have a public directory, and you have the source where I just have an app.js and app.css, and I have an index.css and index.js. We're going to have all our code in app.js. Just to keep things simple, we're not going to abstract away every component in its own component file, which would have been cleaner. So instead, we're going to keep everything in app.js so that you have all the code in one place. I believe it should be easy to understand it if I do it that way. Alright, so let's start by importing the packages that we need. So the first thing we need is the React packages. So that's going to be the useState hook and React itself. There you go. And then we want to import our app CSS file. So that's here. There you go. All right, and let's just create the function now so that we have something to just compare against. So let's just have hello world, and then we're gonna export the app component. And there you go. So we have hello world right there. So we have the skeleton running, and now let's go ahead and import the packages that's gonna actually let us create both the map and the tooltip. So we're gonna import everything from a package called React Simple Maps. And the classes that we need, or the components that we need, are gonna be composable map, geographies, geography, marker, annotation, and zoomable group. There you go. And another package we need is gonna be called React Tooltip. And we're just gonna get the React Tooltip from there. There you go. All right, so there you go. All our imports should be working. Let's make sure it did not break. There you go. So if you don't have the React Simple Maps and React Tooltip package installed, you just need to do a npm install on them. All right, now let us get started with the component design. So the first thing we want to do is enclose everything in a div. We give it a class name called app, and then we give it some style. So we give it a width of 100%. We give it a height of 100%. We make it a flex box, so we give it a display of flex. We want everything stacked on top of each other, so it's gonna be flex direction column. And then we're gonna align everything to the center just to make it look prettier. There you go. And the last one. Nice. So that's all the styles we need. And now within the div, let's just give the headline at first, which is gonna be, let's build some cool maps. All right, now let's see things in action. There you go. We have the title centered. the map is gonna be below it. So let's get started with the map now. All right, so we're gonna enclose the whole map in a div. So let's just give that. And then that div is gonna have a few styles. We're gonna give it a width of 1400 pixel. And we're gonna give it some border so that you can distinguish between the start and the end of the map. All right, now the map itself. So the first thing you need is the composable map component. You give it a prop called data tip, and you just give it empty string. And then you have the geographies. So I'm gonna copy paste some code over here and then explain what that's doing. Because I think it's gonna be time consuming if I just go ahead and write the whole thing down. So I'll just copy it here. There you go. Paste it over here. That's gonna be the child of composable map. I'm gonna delete what we don't need right now, which is gonna be these, I believe. There you go. So let's delete it. Let me just see if it's rendering correctly. Did I miss something over? So I have a syntax error somewhere. It says unexpected token, so I think I have equals over here. There you go. Alright, so let's just draw URL. Oh, right. So the first thing I need to explain before we go over the code that I just copy pasted is a constant we need. We're gonna call it geoURL, and I'm gonna copy paste the constant. There you go. So what this constant does, it's a URL. It's pretty much a JSON file. We give it to our package, and what that lets the package do is render a basic version of the world map with all the names of the country. So you can see we have world 110M over here. That's a JSON file that comes with the package. This is just part of the default library. And once you use it, when you render the map already knows where each country is and what's their names. So it's easier that way rather than you needing to define a whole JSON file. There are a bunch of these JSON files with the default library that you can try out, but we're going to use the most basic version of it. You can also create custom ones, but that's way beyond the scope of this video. So we're just going to use the one that's in the documentation. Alright, so now going to the code over here, let's just see if the map is rendering. Alright, so we do have the map rendering over here, so let me just see how it works. So we have the composable map, which is the top level component. And then within that, the first thing we have is the geographies component. And it takes in a prop called geography, where we give the URL from where it should get the geography. So think of geography as each of the country. So what geographies does when you pass it the geo URL is give you all the geographies that are gonna be there in the map. So it's a high level component which is returning to you this variable over here called geographies, which is an array of all the countries that are there in the map. What we're doing is iterating through each of the country, and then for each of the country we're creating a geography component which is going to be the individual countries that you see within the map. So if I go to the map, you can see each of these is each of the country in the map is going to be each of the geography component. All right, so this is pretty much all you need to get a basic version of the map going. So now that we have the basic version going, you can see we can't zoom in within. So we're zooming into the Google Chrome tab, but there's no way you can zoom into the map itself, or you can't like move around. So we're gonna give it some interactivity. to make it much more fun to play around with. And the way we do that is very simple. We just wrap everything in a zoomable group component. There you go. So we take our geographies and then we move it inside this one. Oops. Wait a minute. So we have our composable map. There you go. So we take our geographies and then we move it inside zoomable group. And then for a zoomable group, we just give it a zoom level of 1. And now if we take a look, so now we should be able to zoom in. There you go. So we're zooming into the map. You can move around just by clicking and holding, and then you can zoom out too. There you go. Right? So it becomes much more interactive than what we had at the beginning. Alright, so now that's working. Let's see what we want to do next. So we got the basic map going. We know how to zoom and pan. Now let's put some markers in the map. So the first thing we need is some example markers. So we're just gonna create a constant over here, name it markers, which is gonna be an array. And each of the marker is gonna have 3 properties. So it's gonna be the marker offset. It's gonna be the name of the marker. And then the coordinates. Right, so I'm gonna copy paste the coordinates. It's gonna be an array with the lat and the long. There you go. So marker offset, that is pretty much that offset is pretty much which direction from the actual marker the name is gonna show up. So the marker is gonna be at this coordinates, but for the name you need to tell the map library where you want to show the name. So we're gonna say -15 marker offset, so right beside the coordinate, not too far away. So we're gonna have a bunch of other markers. I'm just gonna copy paste those markers because they're gonna be the exact same thing. There you go. So we have one for Melbourne, we have one for Dhaka, and we have one for San Francisco. So we have 4 markers in total. Now, how do we show these markers in the map? That's the next thing. So we did the geographies, and then after the geographies component, we're gonna have a piece of code which is gonna be mapping through the markers constant that we just created. And then we're gonna do some destructuring. We have the name, the coordinates, and the marker offset. And then we're gonna go through each of them. And for each of the markers, what we're gonna do is, let me just see if I have my parentheses correctly. I should have all the parentheses. All right, so for each of the markers, what we're gonna do is create a marker component. Marker, there you go. The marker component is gonna take in the key, which is gonna be the name of the marker, and the coordinates, which is gonna be the coordinates, right? And then within the marker component, let's just do, within it, we're gonna have a circle. This is gonna be our marker. The radius is gonna be 10. We're gonna fill in a color, and I'm just giving a random color. These are just some style. We're giving a stroke so that we see how it looks. And we have our stroke width. These are all customizable. You can make it look however you want it to. All right, so that's our circle. And then we have the text, which is the name, right? So for the text, once again, we're gonna give it some style, which is gonna be the anchor. We're gonna give it to the middle. We have our offset, which is gonna be, as I mentioned, how far along the y-axis compared to the point. And then we're gonna give it some style, which is gonna be just the font family, if I can spell. Font family is gonna be just system UI. And then we're gonna give it a fill color just gonna be 5D5A6D. Once again, these are all customizable, so feel free to put whatever you want here. And within the text, we're actually gonna give the text, which is gonna be the name. All right, so this should have the markers working as expected. So let's see. There you go. So we have our 4 markers right here. So we have San Francisco, Sao Paulo, Dhaka, and Melbourne. And see, the offset determines from this point over here where your text is gonna be. All right, so over here, let me just zoom out. There you go. So yeah, over here, I chose a circle. You can customize the marker the way you want it to. You can customize the text. And of course, we're using a static list. Instead of a static list of markers, you can dynamically pull from an API. That works too. All right, so the next thing is gonna be the annotation, which is also very, very simple to do. So we're gonna create a new component called annotation. And then let's close it. There we go. Don't know why it's oh, right. So it's gonna be outside this one. There you go. So we have annotation. We need to give it the point of the annotation. So we're just gonna give, it's called a subject. It takes an array of lat and long. So once again, we're gonna, let me just close the pop-up. There you go. So we're gonna just copy paste lat long. There you go. So that's the lat long. And then we have the x, which is gonna be just the location. So let me, so subject. So we have the subject. And then we have the dx and dy, which is gonna be where the direction of the annotation. It's gonna be over here. And then we have the another thing called connector props, which is gonna be the line you see between the location and the text. And then we have the text itself. That's gonna be right over here in between. So I'm just gonna copy paste the text. There you go. So we have the text, we just give it some style, and then we hard code Paris just to show you how that works. All right, so refresh. So there you go. You have the annotation right here, right? So now we have the markers running, we have the annotation working, and the only thing left is the hover state, right? When the one with the tooltip. So for that, we need to use the React state hook. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna have something called content. We're gonna set content, if I know how to type. There we go. And then we're gonna use state. It's gonna be an empty state. And then we need to set this content. And the content is pretty much gonna be your tooltip, right? So it's gonna be right underneath the heading. We have the React tooltip. React tooltip. And within the React tooltip, we're gonna have the content. Now the content starts off as a nothing, so we need to set the content somewhere, right? And the place where we do that is gonna be in our geography, because that's what we're gonna hover on, right? So if you remember, we had the key and the geography. Over here, we're gonna create on mouse enter. And then we're gonna on mouse enter. All we're gonna do over here is take in the name, destructure it from the properties, and then we're just gonna call set content, and we're gonna give it the name over here, right? So that's gonna set the content to the name. And the last piece of thing we would need is on leaving, when your mouse is exiting. Of course, we don't want to show the tooltip for that country anymore. So we just want to do set content to empty. All right, and then we want to give it some style so that we know when we're hovering on top of it. So that's just gonna be hover, and on hover, we just want to fill it with a color. Let's just do F5.3. And we don't want any outline because that looks ugly. Okay. All right, and that should do it. Let's go take a look. None is not defined. Exactly. There we go. All right, so now as we're hovering, you can see the country name showing up using React State. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to build in this one. So over here, let's just give the whole thing a color so that it pops. I'm gonna give it a background of, let's say, pink. There you go. So we have the whole thing built. You see the markers, you have the annotation, you can zoom in. While zoomed in, you can pan around. And lastly, you have the tooltip showing up whenever you hover on a country. So hopefully that was helpful. It's pretty simple, as you saw, to create maps. This is the very, very basic version of it. You can customize every single thing I showed you, and hopefully you'll get a chance to play around and learn how to do more fancy things with the package. With that being said, if you have any questions, just leave it in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.